Hello, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to my talk about advanced API management and operations with the developer and customer-focused approach in particular. Together, I am from Bluesoft company. Together with the RBI, Raiffeisen Bank International, we built the central group integration layer, which was designed to host API management and operations governance platform. And I wanted to share with you some insights and some learnings that we managed to go through. Yep. So let me just prepare. And we'll be ready. Okay. I'm an integration and solutions architect. I've been in IT for more than 10 years, doing more than 4 years the API management. And you can reach out to me in case of any questions after the presentation. So the agenda looks like follows. So we will talk about the API management, and I'll talk about the API runtime operations as well, based on the RBI example, and then I will share some conclusions I wanted to talk to you. So let's start with the nice allegory that the APIs are doors, and I think it's very common to say that doors allow us to enter or leave the room, the same as APIs. APIs allows us to use capabilities of different third-party software, and those should be easy and intuitive to use as the same as APIs. Those doors can be locked or could have restricted access, so we have the same features for the application programming interfaces, and the doors are entry points, but they separate the areas, so they keep the different components separated and can vary in design, of course, with the different security levels. And in my opinion, the API management and governance is all about controlling, distributing, and analyzing the APIs so that we allow organizations to meet both business and developers' needs. And it's super important to keep track on every part of the API lifecycle process and have it transparently shared and documented so that every step is prepared, reusable, and is a repeated process. But I will not focus on the details about the lifecycle here. I want to mention the split of the APIs did by Louis Weir. We have private APIs, which are APIs consumed within the organization to foster reusability. We have public APIs, which are APIs which should be easy to access, with the goal that the goal of the consumption should be the highest, so that we can drive the innovation and monetization. And we have partner APIs, so these are APIs consumed by other vendors or other third-party components with some business contractual relationship and exchanging some capabilities. So in my opinion, API management is a big piece of a puzzle in the whole software delivery lifecycle. And we need to understand that there are many different applications and many different teams that are implementing and integrating APIs. And we are doing API management in order to make their life as easy as possible. So all we do is to host or create a platform so that the APIs can be easily hosted, can be easily maintained, evolved, and monitored, so that the needs are met and we can react quickly in case of any unexpected behavior. And I want to share with you some traits that I think the good API management platform has, and I will show you how we did it. So in the first, I think it must have a proper, nice documentation. So how we did, we improved our documentation with every description using the AI so that the descriptions are easy to read, can be understood by anyone, even by the people who are not part of the team that is actually implementing the API, so that they are not in the domain and they don't need to be even in the domain, so that they should understand the API. The API documentation is also accessible for anyone in the organization, so that someone who wants to find some use case for the API can easily find it. The next one is actually the high quality of the API and how we in RBI verify the quality of the APIs. We implemented end-to-end tests. So we validated the responses and we validated also some business features of the APIs implemented by our providers, so that the APIs are of high quality for our clients. And we must think of the APIs as API client-driven APIs, because actually they are we are building APIs for them, for the clients who are going to use the APIs. The next one is the discoverability of the API. So we need to think about the aligned APIs to business needs and to expose APIs to verify if somebody uses them. So the developer portal or any other component that is crucial in well-designed API management platform is the discoverability of the API and the easiness to request for the access or to request for any maintenance-related tasks. The next one is the security of the API, and it's extremely important. We implemented the OAuth2.0 protocol with the JWT tokens, which were the main security control for the access. But what is more, we also use the Active Directory groups in the tokens. But what I wanted to emphasize here is that security of the API is extremely important. It's the question not if we are going to be attacked, but when. And to prove it, there is the I found out that the SQL injection attack, so the web vulnerability, one of the common web vulnerabilities, raised during last 3 years over 363% up. So the number of attacks is growing, the number of attackers is growing, and we need to prepare our APIs and our infrastructure to be resilient. The next thing we should focus on is the balance between usability and reusability. It's extremely important to know and understand that the more API is usable for the given use case, the less reusable it is. In our case, we had 13 different network units, which were our API providers implementing the same APIs. And we created the platform for the standardization purposes, so that we can all speak the common language and have the same ubiquitous nomenclature. So even though sometimes for certain teams, the focus on the reusability on the API make them do some integrations longer because of the APIs being driven by the reusability factor, not by the usability. It's paid off in the long run because the same application could be easily hosted and deployed to multiple countries with just small customizations, but the API was the same. The next thing is the consistency and compliancy. So it's extremely important that the API design looks as if one person designed it, because if it's consistent and looks the same, the time the developer must spend in learning how to use the API and how the API is structured is plummeting. So it's super important that every API keeps the same patterns and keeps the same rules. And how we enforced it, we implemented code review, API definition review. We implemented linter, which verified some common things. So on the pull request level, we could easily be notified about any inconsistency, about anything that is not right. And the number of APIs is rising, and it raised. It has gone up to 165, 67% last year only. So we can see that the number of endpoints is growing. And how can I be sure of that? It's because the API management market actually is predicted to be valued 4 times more than it is right now, over $20 billion. So I am pretty sure that APIs entirely control the digital world, and we need to be able to run APIs smoothly so that they can be operated easily. And one of the factors is that the digital transformation is enabled by APIs. We know that the new digital channels enable companies to offer their capabilities to bigger number of customers due to the fact that the digital channels are easier to be consumed. But actually, the digital transformation is not only about the technology, it's about the new business operating models that could be established in the companies, so to run business in an improved way. So in order to take most profit from the digital transformation is actually to be able to design new operating model and new revenue streams which could enhance and give the company the biggest leap towards the future. And why it is important? Because actually developers are doing the job, right, with the integration. So we need to think about the developer experience so that the developer has the feeling and easiness to use and to implement the APIs. And I believe it is possible nowadays with the help of many different tools that could automatically generate the code, etc., and so that developers can finally spend more time on the business value delivery rather than on the technology itself. But we cannot forget about the user experience as well. And users for our APIs are both developers and business. So business people must also be able to easily verify and use our APIs. So the documentation may be connected to some sandbox test environment. Easy to use interfaces should be prepared so that any user can actually gain knowledge from the platform that the platform enables to, right? And I personally think that it's important that with the growing number of devices, this whole IoT thingy, we need to be cautious how we are operating our APIs. And the IoT market is also predicted to grow twice during the next 4 years. So it's extremely important to remember that the number of interconnected devices is growing, and every new device or gadget that we do have is actually connected to the internet. So every connected to the internet point exposes or integrates with some endpoint, which we can say is an API. And the number of IoT devices also is growing from 15 to over 30 in the next 10 years. What is more, the number of global IoT connections is also predicted to grow, and in the next 6-7 years, it will double. So if we do not get the proper way of handling APIs right now, we will be behind the front runners. And with the growing popularity of AI, we also need to host the API platform for the AI APIs, because we communicate with AI using APIs. And it's also extremely important to have such a platform. But let's talk more about runtime operations. Before I talk about runtime operations, I want to tell you that most third-party API related issues are need once week attention. So 88% of third-party related issues are required to get one week attention, which is a very, very high number. And the reason for that is that 60% of respondents say that they spend too much time on troubleshooting instead of new features development. And actually, that's what we are trying to lower by hosting the API management platform. We want to focus on the business value delivery, on the enabling the business value delivery, rather than spending time on the troubleshooting. And 47% of the people only somewhat agree that the API management tool can help manage errors in production, which in my opinion is a very low number, because API management platforms are designed to help you to run the APIs, and people don't trust them. So we need to increase the quality of the APIs so that people can start trusting the API platforms. And let's start with some simple case that we implemented in RBI. We have the client application, which connects to the API gateway, which then routes the call to the API provider. But in reality, it's more complex. We have different client applications which are connecting to the same API gateway, and there are many different API providers which could implement even the same API multiple times. So we have many-to-many relationship, and we need to manage it in an efficient way. And when we scale, we need to be prepared so that everything runs as expected. And if we zoom to the API gateway, I would distinguish like three components, which is the load balancer, which sits in front. Then there's some plugins that enhance the platform capabilities, like request validators and others, and some reverse proxy that could route calls based on the path, header, or anything else. And if we zoom to plugins now, I would distinguish the authorization and authentication mechanisms, the request validation that we implemented, the custom metrics so that the alerting and monitoring can be of high quality, the payload transformations if needed, of course, and the reverse proxy component. And what we did is that with the growing number of users of the clients and providers, and with the same team setup, we need to shift a little bit the responsibility from the platform team to the clients and providers. And how we did it? The first thing is we did automatic email notifications. So anytime anyone requested for anything on the platform, we gave the opportunity to subscribe to some given APIs and send automatic notifications. So if API has been changed, all interested parties are notified. The next thing is the new interface version. Let's say the API provider want to expose a new interface version. Then the API provider or the team creates some request in the user interface, for example, Jira or any other interface, and fills out just a set of properties that are mandatory. And these properties in the user interface are mapped to the JSON properties. And actually, we kept our configs for the API platform in JSON, so we could easily map the input field to the property in JSON and then automatically create a pull request to the configuration file with the changes that are requested. And the platform team didn't need to spend time on the reviewing and doing the changes manually, but rather just reviewing and accepting it, so that the whole deployment process could trigger the dry run and verify the correctness of the whole setup, of course with the proper email notifications to any interested party. The same, for example, we implemented in the plugin custom 501 not implemented error response, because sometimes if the API is being implemented in multiple providers, in multiple network units, not all network units implemented the selected API. So for the given request parameters, we provided the 501 response. And if the client application wanted to get access to this API, or the provider said that we are actually right now ready to provide data to this endpoint, we required just to fill out the form on the user interface, and then based on this, we were able to automatically create the pull request to the proper config file and then give it to the platform team for the review. So the shift from for the responsibility was a little bit towards the users, so that they know how to operate on the platform and they know what is going on. They are automatically informed, and the checks, the linter rules, the syntax verifications, and all other validations were implemented as well on the pull request level. The same happens for 401 and 403 authentication and authorization error responses. So we can say that APIs enable different parties with the capabilities. Like in Google Maps, we could easily see the estimated price for the taxi that could take us from point I to target B. And that's because probably Google Maps implemented the API call out to the third-party Uber API and get it. And in our case, we in RBI implemented the group applications, which were then implemented once, and with the small customizations, we could deploy this application to multiple network units very easily with the help of the platform. And we need to remember that we are not only as a platform maintenance crew to help business developers, but also to help business. And we need to understand that anything that they need, we should solve. And we should be helpers. We should be the team that actually is teaching them how to do the APIs, how to design them, how to host them. So we need to have good documentation with the good descriptions, with all limitations set, with maximum lengths, patterns, and all other stuff explicitly defined in the documentation, so that you don't get answers and you don't get questions about what's the maximum length or why the error is like that. And when we talk about errors, it's also extremely important to have the errors for all common cases easily described on some page, and also included in the response for the API. And onboarding to such platform must be easy, as if you click on the application and just select the proper options, because onboarding is like the longest part and the most troublesome part. So the process of onboarding should be easy and not only understandable by DevOps, but also understandable by the standard people. For example, for our case, they asked us to implement some POCs for them, and we said that's not a problem. We implemented in Java 2. POCs, the one is the claim check pattern, and actually when people wanted to send big payloads using our API platform, there was some limit. And in order to enable this, we implemented the API, which you can use to get the upload URL, upload the file, send the URL in the API, so that the API provider can download the file from the given URL sent via API. We also implemented the token exchange. If some API provider couldn't follow the security standards of RBI, because it was, for example, an external API provider, we implemented the token exchange application so that it is easy to use and could be just taken by developers as a real platform team do this. And again, we need to remember about the security of the API, because actually authenticated attackers come from 61% of all vulnerabilities. So it's enormous number, taking into account how important it is and how much we say and how much it is said by the gurus about the security of the API. Oops. No. Okay, yes, correct slide, thanks. So the testing of the web applications is extremely important, and I want to tell you what test we implemented in our application. So we implemented end-to-end tests, which I mentioned. We implemented tests, regression tests run on our pipeline, so that any custom feature implemented is being tested on every pull request. Then we implemented fuzzy testing, so we tried to integrate some component and run them on a regular basis to try to break the API and get some error responses. We also implemented OWASP Zap tool, which allowed us to keep up to any security vulnerabilities and be resilient. And also we implemented linter, so that the linter rules were run on a regular basis on every pull request, which could then help us limit the number of manual interventions during the review. And of course, business testing and how it looked like. So there was a trigger which ran a set of Postman collections, which called the API gateway, and the API provider provided the response, and then this response was sent to the custom Java application, which validated the response based on the schema and also validated some business rules. And the report has been automatically generated and sent to the email. So our API provider could get reports of the quality of the API on a daily basis from us. And actually, we also built a POC how we could use the AI. So if we think of some use case, please create a customer with randomly generated data and write it as a prompt to AI. And then AI, based on the connection to the repository, can verify which, based of course also on the business descriptions that the API interface has, can find the proper post customer endpoint and then select some, create the JSON for the request and select some test environment to send it and get a response. We actually made it happen. So we could send easy commands to AI, which was integrated with the repository of the interfaces and the test environments, and could act as a small black box and do simple steps, sequential steps to deliver some business objective written by a prompt. And if we think about more sophisticated cases, we could think of this as a component that could easily integrate to any third party and could even fulfill advanced complicated flows of, for example, going through a loan application process or onboarding a customer, and do it automatically and test it automatically based on the business description of how it should be done. So this could enable also business people to start using the APIs in a way they need it, not in a way they are meant in the documentation. And actually, I was working with APIs that were documented very poorly. That's why I mention this all the time. And we need to also remember about the performance and resilience tests. So they were run on a quarterly basis so that the results can be compared in a repeated process, and any customization or any maintenance or tasks could be done in an easy way. Then, of course, monitoring. So our custom metrics allow us to build dashboards which could allow us to analyze trends and react in case something is not as expected. For example, timeout, or for example, higher latency, or for example, high response times from the API provider. Anything that could be potentially risky towards our customers could be easily monitored and, of course, alerted. So we built the alerting solution so that upon given threshold, the notification has been sent and could be easily react upon. We also built the Lambda, or the application that was regularly calling our health API. So our health API was designed and mandatory to be implemented by API providers to provide information about the state of the API and about the list of the API they implemented, so that we could build the health API dashboard and could easily monitor every API. And actually we had hundreds of API implemented by 13 network units. So it's enormous number of APIs to be handled without proper monitoring and alerting. So I will conclude that it's extremely important to have every step of the process described in a reusable way, and we need to gather feedback from our clients and providers about anything that they would like to use or about our platform, because we can never predict their use cases and their needs. We can just prepare for what we know or what we assume, but we can never validate it without proper feedback mechanism. So the first conclusion is that we need to have and get the support of the C-level board in our API management initiative. Even if we build the best API management platform and the best rules, if we don't get this support, other teams implementing the APIs could not respect them, and we could not enforce to be respected. So it's super important that the highest board level, they understand the positives and the need to use the API management platform. The second one is to get the common tips for clients and providers. So there is a list of 10 or 15 cases that our clients and providers have issues with, and we could build some playbook with them so that they don't need to bother us with every small detail, but then just they can verify and follow the steps in order to solve their issues. The third one is to do the API review and to do it thoroughly, and you can use additional internal rules. You can build your custom tools in order to automatically verify the quality of the API design, but it's important to have the API review process in place. The next one is to understand business driver of API change requests. If the change request mentions only what property must be added and where, it should ring a bell, because it doesn't need to follow the reusability principle. So every change request must be followed with the business discussion, why you need this change request and what capability it should deliver, so that you can, as a API management platform team, can react and can select the most appropriate place and the most appropriate design for the given use case. We need to care for the quality of the API data as well, because the best API without the proper quality data will not serve its purposes. So the data must be of high quality, and we can test it using tests. And we need to remember and repeat to our API providers that not only the API design, but also the API data are important. We found out also that the versioning and deprecation strategy from the day one is crucial, because even though we are designing the API in a draft version at the very beginning, it's important that they also understand what they need to prepare in order to version the API and to maintain and evolve the API, and also get the feedback, because the different providers may do it in a different way, and we want to have a standardized approach of handling the APIs. Then implement feedback loops, which I mentioned, automate API testing, which I also mentioned, and to have the developer-friendly documentation so that everything can be verified from the documentation, and even maybe tested with some sandbox test environment. Like the last, one of the last ones is the quality of the request validators, which I found not very high, but fortunately on the API days I was guaranteed that the new JSON schema validator has been exposed, and I hope that the sophisticated and advanced API designs like circular dependencies or polymorphism is actually providing clear error descriptions to the clients if they have any errors. And that's all. I wanted to thank you for your attention, and you can reach out to me in any case. I am happy to assist you, share the knowledge, and share the presentation. Thank you very much, and hope you have a great day.